How's it going, everyone? Freddie. We're here in the living room. I just kind of made this beat like maybe last week or whatever. I'll just share it with everybody. Um, yeah, maybe I'll release it. I don't know. But basically, I got another sample pack from Elijah Fox of some more of him just playing on the keys and stuff like that. And I was just kind of going through samples, and I just basically picked one and made a beat out of it. Usually when I get sample packs, I like to import them into my MPC Live, and then I'll just sit on the couch and then just kind of mess around just to kind of sketch out an idea. And then usually it'll get to a point where I'm like, okay, I can't just use the MPC Live for this. I have to kind of import everything onto my computer. So I basically just took that idea and then just remade it on the computer using Ableton. And then why is this okay? And then yeah, this is what we're gonna have. Let me go ahead and just like play the whole thing out, and then I'll talk about it. Okay. Sorry, that went like entirely too long. So I initially just started with basically the sample, which is this. And then I chopped it up using the push. So this is what you get. And that is this area right here. Let's see if I can solo that. Yeah. And then I built some drums, basically. So it's just basically this. That's pretty much it. And then just layered other elements on top of the drums. So here's the initial drum. And usually I'll just do like a few takes like on the on the push, and then just kind of adjust like the MIDI information, just kind of shift things over and stuff like that. If you can see the bottom there, maybe we should make this bigger so you can kind of see what's going on here. Yeah, just kind of like quantize certain things and then leave things a little bit looser. And then just for the effects on this, I really utilize the Ableton 10, the drum bus plugin or effect. I use that a lot, actually. It makes the drums like a little bit more punchier, and then you can kind of adjust like the airiness or the transient kind of feature on that. And then these are just like elements that I just stacked on top of it. So this is all kind of like the percussive elements. And usually when you add on like percussive loops that are a little bit more looser, even if the drums, I've said this before, even if the drums are kind of like really quantized, like the kick and the snare and stuff, but all the other elements that you add on top of it, like shakers and like triangle and, cymbals and stuff like that are a little bit more loose. It gives the drums a little bit more of a looser vibe, rather than just doing everything, like just pushing everything out, if that makes any sense. So here are the drums by itself. And then I just group all the drums together, pretty much. And then I made a bass line, and believe it or not, I had a lot of trouble with this. Sometimes, since I don't play any musical instruments and I just learn everything by ear, I just kind of like sit there and I just memorize which keys to press. And for the past like few months, I've been using Contact for a lot of sounds, like bass sounds and like horns and stuff like that. But yeah, this is the bass. I just played it on the keys. And then all these other brass elements, like trumpet and saxophone and all this stuff you heard. This is all from Arcade, which is a plugin. And it's just basically like a bunch of samples that you can kind of tune to your song, as well as, like it has a whole bunch of like... Yep. So these are all just like different packs that I kind of just stacked all together. So here are all the brass elements. And then I did the same thing with these like vocal samples as well. And then some of the vocal samples were like ran a little bit too short, and I wanted to extend them. So what I'll do is I'll just play them out once on the like on this thing. Like say like something like this. It's like a really short sample, but I wanted it to kind of like extend without like really like time stretching it. So what I'll do is I'll basically just play it once, and then I'll bounce the MIDI information into audio information. And then what I'll do, if you can kind of see here on the screen, is I'll basically just loop certain, like a little section, and just have that continuously play out. So like something like this. It was really short. I think it just kind of like stopped like right here. This is the whole sample. And then it just basically stopped. So what I'll do is I'll copy this like section right here, and then just kind of just duplicate it on, and so it can extend a lot more. Something like that, like pads, like pad sounds or string sounds. Whoops. You can do. I mean, by itself, the way it loops, it sounds weird, but within the mix, it can, like, a lot of the other elements can mask that kind of looping effect. Yeah. And I think this is this, and sometimes what I'll do with certain things, I don't think I did it with this, but if I want to stretch it out more, like something like this, is what you can do is you can warp the sample at a I think a lower BPM. So like say if I take the warping feature off and I transpose this, see how it kind of like stretches out? Say we do something like that. Then you hit warp again, and then you bring the transposing back to what it was normally at. You can do some. See, you can kind of like stretch it out without losing the pitch of it. I mean, of course, you can kind of hear that like digital distortion from like doing that, but if it's something that you can kind of mask underneath the whole track, then it won't be noticeable. But that's just a little tip, even though I didn't do it here. This is just like another element that I wanted, another MIDI information that I bounced into audio. But I think for this one, the reverb within Arcade wasn't where I liked it, so I just bounced it into an audio form and added more reverb and just kind of EQ'd it. And it's just more of samples there. And then the rest of the song is just kind of like editing it where I want like the drums to kind of drop out at certain sections, and then kind of like this, I guess, second verse section is some of the trumpet or brass elements aren't there, and some of the vocal elements aren't there, and some are there. So I do that just so like the first verse and the second verse don't sound entirely different or entirely the same. There's a little bit of a variation to them. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I've been using, really been using a lot of like vocal kind of like samples, especially with Arcade. They have a bunch of cool things that you can kind of like layer on top of each other, and they're all coming from like different sound packs. So that's, I guess, one tip you can use is if you use a bunch of sample packs, you can kind of mix match a bunch of things together, which is kind of cool. But yeah, that is pretty much it. I mean, most of the brass stuff, the horns is all like mixed matched. I don't even know what I'm saying. Uh, like different elements from different sample packs. But it all, like this is kind of how I usually start sketch idea out on like MPC Live or even on my computer or something like that. Something really simple, and then just kind of go all in on Ableton. Even though this isn't a very complicated like track. It's just a lot of layering. Sorry. And then you burp. But I can just kind of quickly talk about some of the effects that I'm using on here. Let's see. Like most of the stuff, I use a lot of reverb, and I EQ a lot of things here and there. Stuff like that. A lot of like panning just to get a little bit more of a wider spectrum of a sound. But I actually in live I don't really use the sends and returns a lot. I know you can kind of like, there's two things you can do. You can kind of group tracks together and then just put effects, audio effects on a group, or you can put them on like sends and returns, and then just assign each track to that particular send or that particular return, and then all of those tracks will be using the same effects. The only reason why I don't do that, the only reason why I put effects on individual tracks is because a lot of the parameters that I use within like say an EQ or reverb, they're all different from each other. So I don't want to just kind of put the same reverb with the same parameters on multiple tracks, if that makes any sense. I usually put effects on separate tracks, even though they're the same exact effect. They're just different parameters, because sometimes, like for instance, like say a brass track or something like that, or a bass, like I want the reverb to be on the wet and dry knob pretty low, like maybe 10% or something, and then like on a brass instrument I want the reverb to be like 25 to 50%. So that's just the way I've been doing things for years. And then my mastering chain on this is pretty simple. I kind of do the go-to kind of things, just like some simple EQing, just using the stock EQ. I probably should use a better EQ, like an SSL EQ or something like that, and whatever. I'm just not too serious about like how I master all these songs. Of course, I've always talked about RC20. I use it very sparingly for certain things. For this, just kind of like that vinyl effect. So it produces like noise, kind of like a vinyl noise, and just like more reverb on this, and kind of like this dropout feature, like you were listening to it on a tape deck or something. I've been using Ozone for a while too. I'm on Ozone 8 now, and I use their imaging tool a lot. I also use their maximizer, but mainly their imaging tool. I'll come in and just kind of adjust things. I didn't even have it on here. And I mainly like boost kind of like the mid to high ranges, and kind of leave the low end not touched. So I'll play both wet and dry. So here it is dry without that imaging tool. And here it is with it. I mean, you can, if you listen really closely, you can hear the difference. Preferably if you have like headphones on. It's off, on. And I use this just to get a wider spectrum of like of how the track sounds. And then my go-to limiter has always been the Oxford like Sonics suite, and I think their limiter is really good. Like a lot of limiters, they really like smash the track where it just compresses like everything, and your drums really suffer from it. But I feel like the Oxford limiter really doesn't do that too drastically. Sometimes I'd use the SSL mix bus through the Waves bundle, but I don't think I have it on this computer. I really like that one too. I was using that one for a long time. But if I had to go to, it would be this Oxford limiter. Here, let's see. It really brings out like the high range of frequencies really well, without making it too without smashing the low end too drastically. But yeah, that's kind of like my simple mastering chain, I guess. I would use Ableton like stock ones, but these particular mastering plugins, I think they work really well. I also subscribe to Slate Digital plugins, and I use a few of those from time to time. And then I also have something else that I use. I forgot. Some stuff from the Waves bundle. But yeah, I like using third-party plugins, especially for mastering. And then, quote-unquote mastering. I'm not a mastering engineer or anything like that. I'm pretty sure if you listen to this track on or if you looked at it on a waveform, it'd probably be all peaking like everywhere. But I try to like use it pretty, like I'll look at the meters and make sure there's a lot of like a fluctuation of the meters jumping up and down. So yeah, but yeah, that's pretty much it for this track. Maybe I'll put it up on like SoundCloud and Spotify and stuff, and you guys can kind of stream and download it. But yeah, I guess that's it. Thanks again for tuning in to this YouTube. I don't know if I have anything else to say. I was going to record like a podcast, so maybe I'll just do that right now without the video. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just a bunch of layering. Started with how I usually start things, with piano sample or, some kind of like melodical sample, and just kind of chop it up. And then I'll add drums to it and kind of maybe put down a bass line, and then I'll kind of sculpt the drums a little bit more. And then from there, I'll just add other musical elements. In this case, a lot of trumpet and saxophone kind of samples, just layering, stacking them up. And then some vocal elements for kind of like the hook or the chorus. And that's pretty much it. But yeah, thanks again for tuning in, guys.